Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce you to my guest today, Paul Kirch. Paul serves as the president and CEO of Salience, a holistic digital marketing agency specializing in customer experience optimization, focusing on the buyer's journey from A to Z. His firm moves beyond simple website development to a 360-degree approach to digital marketing strategy that has greater impact and higher returns on investment. He helps business leaders create dynamic lead conversion tools, which drive more sales and success by evaluating and optimizing a company's entire digital folio. The buyer's journey drives relationship building and trust development with the ultimate goal of creating raving fans. Paul is a regular contributor to the business learning application Audit Advisor, featured among experts such as Seth Godin and Guy Kawasaki. He provides insights on sales, business management, and entrepreneurship. Paul's career began in 1988 when he started writing professional advertising copy while pursuing a degree in journalism, and shortly thereafter, he joined the Gallup organization for the next 10 years, serving in a variety of operations roles. He eventually left to pursue a career in sales and sales leadership. Paul has developed a strong personal brand and has served as a leader in business organizations including the American Marketing Association, Puget Sound Research Forum, Travel and Tourism Research Association, and Marketing Research Association. Recently, he was elected to the board of directors for a nonprofit charitable organization called the Fearless Education Foundation. Paul is a featured monthly contributor to Corks Media's publications. He is also an active volunteer with other national and local business networking groups and spends time helping mentor college students and entrepreneurs. Please join me in welcoming Paul Kirch.
Hey, Tammy, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. What I think would be of great interest to our listeners is to understand maybe some of the choices that you've made along the way and, what propelled you to move from one type of company to another, you were in a number of different kind of functional roles. You started off more in writing and then moved more into sales. So would love to hear about how that trajectory went for you and what compelled you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so I spent 26 years in corporate America wanting to own my own company and didn't really have the courage to just take that leap of faith. But let me step back a little bit. So I grew up in a very small town in western Nebraska. And when I say small, there was 365 people in my entire town. There were not a lot of entrepreneurial examples. So when I got older and was going to school, I was really fascinated with the advertising world. And so that's why I went into copywriting. And I always had a flair for writing, but it wasn't something that I really saw myself doing for a living. But then when I started taking classes, I really started to embrace the art of writing copy and found that I could leverage some of my humor, which was fun. But I needed a job. And so I was writing some freelance copy that wasn't really making me much money. And the Gallup organization was hiring students to come in and do telephone surveys. And I didn't know anything about the marketing research industry. So I took a job with some friends and we would go there and do our surveys and then afterwards go hang out and have fun. And it was a really fun environment for college students. But I started to learn a lot about the marketing research industry. And after a couple of years of doing that, the corporate office offered me a full-time job coming in, working in an operations role. I was a survey programmer for a while. Then I moved into project management. And then the last role that they moved me into, I was there 10 years, was leading a team of technical consultants in our Seattle office. So I was living in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time, and then moved to Seattle And that's how I ended up really finding a love for sales. See, I wanted to own my own company, but the whole time I was there, I had this major fear of taking that risk. And that paycheck every month kind of kept me married to it.
Yeah.
So when I had the opportunity to move into a sales role, I was a technical lead on a technical consultant team. But I thought, man, sales is the closest thing to entrepreneurial role without having to leave that paycheck. And so I left Gallup, and Gallup, my manager at the time, was helpful in getting me into my first sales role. He knew what I wanted. There wasn't really an opportunity within Gallup for where I was. And so I left and started a sales career that later turned into a sales leadership opportunity, where I was presented an opportunity to lead a team of salespeople. And then eventually I was working at a company that I loved. Every day I was excited to go in. Couldn't wait to be there. And the owner of the company told, at the time, I think we had just gotten married. Actually, we were married at the time. He told my ex-wife, who ran the operations group, I was running the sales team, she was running operations. He said, look, I'm selling the company. And she had pretty much helped build that company. He was off doing other things. And then when he came back involved, she still was pretty much running the show. And he'd made some promises to us about how he was going to position it so that there was equity in it for us. And that never came to fruition. And so there was some real hard feelings when the company was sold. And she was pregnant with our first child when I negotiated out of my contract. But it was because I went from loving every day there to hating every day there. The new leadership team was, they were in France. They micromanaged everything we did. And so I really saw my path as not being there. It was better for my marriage. It was better for everybody involved. And so I negotiated out of my contract and kept getting job offers, but kept turning them down. My ex-wife at the time, she said, look, you either need to take one of these jobs or go start this company you've been talking about. So after 26 years of being a wantrepreneur, I kind of forced into this role of entrepreneurship because I couldn't stomach the idea of going back and working for someone else at that point, just because of the negative feelings we had with the way the acquisition was handled.
Yeah. Well, and it was taken out of your hands. I think part of being an entrepreneur is, at least the attraction of it initially, is the idea that you are in more control of your own destiny and your own schedule day to day and your own activities. But I'm curious, going back to the years at Gallup and in those earlier years where you did have kind of a trajectory of growth and you had several different roles, and it sounds like you had a boss who was very supportive. Even back then, you said you were afraid of becoming an entrepreneur, but there was something within you that wanted that. Yet it doesn't sound like you were unhappy in that job. So what kinds of thoughts were you having? That fear was driving them out, but what kinds of thoughts were you having about being an entrepreneur at that time that your fear just wouldn't allow you to step into?
Yeah, let's be clear. There's a big difference between happiness and fulfillment.
Oh, yeah.
But the beautiful thing about where I was I was making enough money to be happy. I was getting enough recognition to be happy, but I was never feeling fulfilled. I never felt like it was what I was meant to do. I felt like I was making someone else rich. I felt like I put in a lot of sacrifice in that company. I put so many overnights there because I was in a technology role. I was in an operations role. There were times where projects had to be done, and I stayed there overnight working, not because I was forced to, not because my manager says you have to do it, but because it was the right thing to do to get the job done. But all that sacrifice I made didn't really, at the end of the day, benefit me much, other than, like I said, I got a couple of nice trophies and plaques, which were nice, but they didn't internally fulfill me.
So when you say internally fulfill you, and you also, it sounds like you equated that with, it wasn't what I was meant to do. Did you know, though, what would be internally fulfilling? Because taking a look down the road of entrepreneurism, there's a lot of ways you can glamorize that, right? The grass is greener on the other side, so to speak. And we know that that's not always the case. So I'm just curious, did you have an idea of what that might be? What was it that you were kind of maybe brushing under the rug for a while?
That's a really great question. And it's one that my answer is going to be a little bit maybe washing over the importance at the time. But I knew that I was meant to serve more than I was serving. And I could have gone out and volunteered. I could have gone out and done other things, but I knew that I brought a lot to the table with my capabilities and the way I communicate that wasn't being utilized in the company the way that I wanted. There were certain barriers for development and growth in the role I was in. Now, I could have gone after other roles, and I didn't. That's ultimately why I took the job in Seattle with Gallup. But at the end of the day, I just felt like I had more to give than I was. So I just felt like I had so much more internal growth to do, and I felt like I had so much more to give back that the role I was in was not going to let me exercise.
And so you had that feeling. That sounds like it's one of those kind of gut feelings. Some people even would say those are the little whispers that show up over time that we kind of ignore or we brush away. But did you know in a more articulated way what, when you said this wasn't what I was meant to do, did you have an idea of what you were meant to do?
Not at the time, really. I
just
knew
had the feeling like this isn't it.
Well, yeah, I knew that my path was being self-employed, at least initially. I knew that my goal was to be my own boss. It's not that I had a problem with authority, but like a lot of people that step into entrepreneurial roles don't necessarily, bow down to authority the way that some people do within a company. I mean, I was a person who, if I saw something that I didn't think was right or I thought would benefit the company, I spoke up, and not everybody appreciates that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of kid gloves you wear. Sometimes you're stepping on people's toes to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, my character is really one that I'm always going to be the person who does what I think is the right thing.
Yeah.
And it isn't always well received. I think that there was limitations to my growth where I was just because of where, I think, Gallup is filled with PhDs, and I didn't have a PhD. I wasn't somebody with an advanced degree, and I had no intention of getting it.
Right.
So I knew that there was a ceiling anyway.
Yeah.
But on top of it, just knowing that like I said, I spent many nights doing overnights there because I thought it was the right thing to do. I often put myself in a position of jeopardy just to do the right things for the company. And I didn't always feel like it was well received, and that's hard.
Yeah.
So I thought I could do more on my own.
And what you're also pointing to, I think, is something that many of us have found ourselves in the position of, which is, doing something that feels like the right thing or doing something that we're told is our job to do. And yet there is some internal conflict, or, it's rubbing us the wrong way, or it doesn't align with our values or our standards in some way. And yet we're given a job. We do feel like we have to do certain things, and we're not going to do less than that. So I understand it. And sometimes you can't even quite get your hands around that discomfort. You're uncomfortable, but you're not even sure exactly, like, may know more of what you don't like than what you do want. And it sounds like you were pretty clear about what you didn't want, and you were ready to figure out what you did want.
Maybe not at the time on the latter.
Yeah.
I think, today it's sexy to be an entrepreneur, right? To say, I'm throwing it away and I'm going to go start my own company. It's sexy. And there's opportunities that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Right.
But, where I was at the time, I was in my early 20s, there is a major sense of guilt for feeling the way I felt, because I thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy here?
Right.
And I think a lot of people, even today, that are really unhappy in their job, they think there's something wrong with them, that their
Right.
colleagues are happy, but they're not.
Which chances are their colleagues. I mean, I think the statistics come out of Gallup that say that the statistics are kind of painful. They're well over 50% of people who say they're not happy at work.
Pew Research and Gallup both have done a lot of studies on that, and that's exactly right. And what's interesting about it is most people are not happy in their role, but I think that culturally, some companies do a much better job of making their employees feel like they matter.
Yeah.
Gallup did a phenomenal job of that. And that's where a lot of my guilt came from, because there was not a company that I've ever been associated with that did a better job of recognizing their people.
Mm-hmm.
Like the awards, the recognition, the thank yous, the, client parties and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great environment. We kind of jokingly called it a cult, because if you worked within Gallup, a lot of your friends and social life were within that organization. And it was a beautiful experience in that regard. So there was a lot of guilt that came with thinking, why don't I appreciate this?
Yeah. I bet you appreciate it even more now than you did then. And you think about all the things that you did and learned over all these years put you where you are now.
I'm still friends with a lot of people I worked with. I appreciate so much from that time.
Yeah.
And, I think had I grown up in an environment where entrepreneurship was embraced and fostered, I grew up with a dad who was a teacher. If you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Kiyosaki, he talks about the poor dad. His mindset was study hard, go get a job, and the company will take care of you. Well, that's the generation my dad grew up in, right?
That's right. I'm a product of that too.
And I've seen a lot of my friends and family and people around me that have had the rug pulled out from underneath them within a corporation, because the companies just don't take care of you like they did. They can't.
They can't afford to, and it's a very different world now. And yet, that's not the reason to become an entrepreneur, just because the company won't take care of you, right?
No. So, and you said earlier, the grass is always greener. I will tell you, entrepreneurship, they say, Peace Corps is the toughest job you'll ever love. I think that really should apply to maybe parenting and then entrepreneurship. Yeah. They're very challenging jobs, especially when things are not going well.
Yeah.
I mean, the weight that you carry as an entrepreneur, an employee will never know what it's like to lay in bed wondering how you're going to make payroll. They'll never know what it's like to have to let half your staff go because you're in a down cycle. There's a lot of pressures that come from business owners that a W-2 wage earner will never be able to relate to.
Right.
Conceptually, yes, but until you've experienced it, no.
Right. So here you are today, offering a unique service. I think we could say you are fulfilled today, that you are where you are meant to be. Would you say?
I'd say that I'm on the path where I want to be.
Oh, okay.
I don't think maybe there's always a reason to keep pushing yourself for more, and always striving to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a divorce. I've actually been divorced twice, and I don't wear it as a badge of honor, but I will tell you that the toughest times in my life were centered around divorce. But what makes divorce even harder is being a single parent.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, trying to run your own business.
Yeah.
Pressures that I've faced over the last 3 years has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the term fulfillment is an interesting one. I am very happy with the path I'm on. I'm very grateful for the blessings that have been bestowed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if fulfillment is right there in the picture right now, because knowing the path you're on and feeling fulfilled are not necessarily in sync when you're not in sync with your right mindset.
Right.
And I went through a bout of depression and stress and anxiety that would be hard for most people to deal with, but then add trying to run a business on top of it.
Whew. Right. And you have payroll to meet and people that you feel responsible for other than your children.
that and clients to serve.
Right. Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
that's right. Clients.
Well, but that's the interesting thing is at the end of the day, they're kind of critical to growing your business. And when when you're feeling not good about yourself internally and you're
Yeah.
trying to put on a smile, it's exhausting.
Yeah. So what I think you're pointing to is that the process of transition, the process of growing, it doesn't really stop. Life is full of ups and downs. I know that sounds trite, but I was, drawing from what you had said earlier about happiness does not equal fulfillment. And so it sounds like you're in a place right now where you are happy with how things are going. Fulfillment is still something you're reaching for, it sounds like. I'm guessing you're still far more fulfilled now than you were when you were working corporate.
It's a different type of fulfillment. I think you take the word, should I be laying down for this conversation, Tammy? I hear they don't do that anymore, but you take the word fulfilled, and obviously filled is part of that.
Yeah.
And I think for anybody to say they're totally fulfilled is probably a very apathetic perspective, because if you get to the point where you feel you're fulfilled, why push yourself anymore? Why strive?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I get,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think I'm trying to put it into a context, thinking about who might be listening to our conversation right now and what pages out of Paul Kirch's book might somebody take to apply it in their own life, because I think some of the things that you're talking about are quite relatable. And I'm grateful to you for sharing some of the dark side of what you've gone through. And yet, clearly, you've made some choices in terms of the path that you've taken professionally. And maybe I'm making an assumption, and you know what happens when you assume.
Well, let's put it in a positive light. Let's step back then. Because we went down a path, and it started to get darker and darker, just because there were some things that I've faced that have made the journey harder. But in the end of the day, it's like, I'm almost 10 years into owning this company, and I love it. I love what we do. I'm very proud of it. I think we've created something very special. Mm-hmm. It has morphed and changed. I started off doing sales coaching and consulting when I first went into business for myself. Mm-hmm. A lot of my clients kept saying, well, can you help us with our marketing? Can you help us with our websites? I thought, well, I've got experience in that space. Absolutely. So I actually built a couple of sites for a client. And then I thought, I don't want to be a web developer. I don't want to be doing this work. And I can't be the, chief cook and bottle washer. Right. I can't do it all. So I found somebody that could work with me to take on those projects, and I partnered with them. They were doing a great job, and over time, I kept getting more and more marketing opportunities. And I was like, okay, that's kind of exciting, and I really like doing this work. And I had this copywriting experience I haven't used in years. So the transition just kind of happened. And one day, when I was going through the divorce, I'm like, you know what? I'm burned out on doing sales coaching and consulting. You have to have a really solid mindset. And at the time, I didn't. Yeah. Do that. And I said, you know what? I really am not enjoying that. I want to focus more on the websites and the marketing piece. And so we transitioned the company to websitesandleads.com. And then today we're known as Selliance. And we can talk about that transition and what Selliance has turned into. Yeah. But we made a major shift in the way that we do digital marketing. And it's a game changer that I think a lot of people will at some point be totally embracing. Right now, we're kind of in the infancy of trying to show people what is possible through a digital folio. But the whole point of this is I am fulfilled in the regards that I've grown. I've been able to take this down the path that I want. I would tell anybody that is on the fence about starting a company, if you're passionate about it and you have the resources to do it, give it a shot, because it is one of the biggest growth opportunities you'll ever face in your life. And for me, I would have started a company when I was 19 or 20 if I would have known what I know today, because it's so much easier when you're young and you don't have a lot of things at risk.
Right. I think you just pointed to something very important too, that, when you're younger, you don't have the obligations and the practicalities of life to worry about that you do once you start a family and you have all these other things. At the same time, though, I think what you're also pointing to is it's really never too late to start something if it's going to
Never.
be, because there's lots of different ways people can start something new or, listen to those whispers and act on them, even in maybe smaller or measured ways to find their way through to a more satisfying place. You know what it's like. I certainly know what it's like to get up every morning and go to a job that just feels like a job and not something that really feels like you have a hand in it or you're creating something or that you're giving it as much as you really can give of yourself to something. That really, it does. It starts to kind of suck the life out of you after a while.
Yeah, and it's ironic that we're having this conversation because I'm friends with Josue Pena, who's a social media growth hacker and marketer. He's really built a reputation as being an Instagram leader. And he posted on LinkedIn today. He started really pushing a lot of content on LinkedIn that there's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Yeah.
And I think, no matter where you are in the cycle, it's never too late.
I agree. So tell us, how can people learn more about your work and how can they get a better taste of what the unique offerings are that Salience has to offer?
Yeah, well, let me just give I don't want to turn this into a commercial, but I'll tell you
No, that's okay.
Tell you why I made the change I did. So
Yeah.
we were doing well, building websites and providing SEO, search engine optimization. And it was an offering that made sense. A lot of digital marketers do that. There's a lot of people out there that, wear the label of web developer. I felt I was doing my clients a great service by bringing them in these leads, driving them to a site that was new and well messaged, but they weren't growing. They were getting leads, but they weren't converting those leads into business.
Mm-hmm.
But here I could pat myself on the back because I'd done a good job. I'd done what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
But over time, we started to see this trend that they weren't converting the leads. It wasn't growing their business. And I thought, there's a problem with this model. And now at one time, it was a lot easier to do conversions on your website. But there's so much competition today, so much noise that conversions are not as easy. So we sat down as a group and we said, we need to address this. We've got access to the resources to do it. Let's start focusing more on a holistic model where we don't just focus on bringing in leads, but we bring in the right people, the right leads, and help you convert those into sales and revenue. And that can be done through several ways. And one of those being conversion rate optimization. But we do a lot of centered around content marketing strategies. And the whole reason I made the shift was because I wanted to feel like I was serving my clients to the best ability. And at one point, I thought I was serving them well, but we weren't helping them grow. Now our focus is actually helping people grow. And so I sleep better at night because I know that we're doing the right things. So Salience is today, we consider ourselves digital sales engineers instead of digital marketers. And the distinction there is our focus is on using an engineering philosophy to really customize our approach for every client to make sure that our focus is on driving real revenue and real ROI.
Mm-hmm. So, Paul, if you had to give somebody, I mean, I know you've already given a little advice out, but I'm wondering if there's any other sort of nuggets of advice you would give to somebody who is, let's say, feeling a little stuck or can't really see their way clearly through to what's possible, even though they have those little whispers kind of nudging them. What do you think would be helpful to them in terms of getting over that hump?
You're talking about somebody who's down on life or somebody who's wanting to get out and start their own company? Because
I think it could be that maybe they're down on, maybe not completely down on life, but maybe more down on the career they're in right now, the space they're in right now. I think for some people it might be going entrepreneurial, and for others it might be just giving themselves a chance to really explore some other industries or some other options, or breathing some new life into a career that could really go in some other directions.
Well, I'm a big fan of the written word, and I say that just because we can give ourselves the pep talk we want. We can say all of the magical things. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, so I love incantations and I love words of affirmation. Those are great. But I think there's so much power in writing things down. Journaling is something that I'm not very good about doing consistently, but I will tell you that in my darkest times, journaling is a very therapeutic tool because it allows you to get those words out of yourself and on paper. And then even if you burn that paper and walk away from it, there's something really powerful about writing it down. So I would say that one of the things I would tell you those people to do is start creating simple lists of, top 10 things I like about myself. What am I grateful for today?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's a great process for unlocking something that is within you, and it'll hopefully get you to get to the next step. Yeah.
And I just did a post today on LinkedIn that is about the fact that knowledge is not power. And knowledge, I don't believe, is power today because there's so much information available to us at our disposal. Our cell phones get answers to almost any question. You want to learn about a drug, some sort of new procedure, whatever. You can find answers for that.
Yeah.
So knowledge itself is not power. But I said there are 3 areas that if you can apply these, knowledge is extremely powerful. One is if you can apply your knowledge, so make it something that you can apply and help actually make a difference in the world, that is huge. Then there's the coaches and consultants, which are people that typically have experience applying knowledge, but now they're in the position of presenting knowledge. So they're presenting it to others, teaching them, showing them what's possible. That's extremely powerful. And then the third group, which is an audience that I think often gets discredited. Sometimes it's the person who knows how to collaborate with others. They may have the knowledge, but they don't know how to apply it. They don't know how to teach it, but they know how to connect with the people that do. And they build a team of either partners or employees that go out and make a huge impact on the world. There's a lot of CEOs that don't know how to use their own software. There's a lot of CEOs that don't know how to write a line of code.
Yep.
Those are the people that have taken knowledge and made it powerful.
Right.
So if you're a person who pats yourself on the back because you've read a lot, you know a lot of things, but you're sitting back and not using it in a way that makes a difference, that's not power.
Oof.
There used to be a lot of value being the smartest person in the room. But now I'd rather be the person who is taking action.
Well, I guess when I think of knowledge as power, I think about when you have the knowledge, it gives you the options to make other choices. So that does take you into action.
Yeah.
The knowledge itself doesn't do anything for you unless you do something with it, which is what you're saying here. Applying it or teaching
apply it, present it, or collaborate. That's when it unlocks it.
I love it.
And so when you were talking about that person who's stuck right now,
I
would tell you that, go out and learn something. That's great. But put it to use.
Yes.
You do not get rich thinking. The book Think and Grow Rich is one of my favorites.
Yes.
If you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, it's an entrepreneurial Bible.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, the key is not to sit and think about it. It's to take action. One of my favorite videos on YouTube, I've struggled to find this video and I need to track it down. It may have been taken down, but it was this woman running in a marathon and she got about maybe 200 yards from the finish line and she falls down and collapses and people rush out to pick her up and she's waving them off because she wants to do it on her own. She picks herself up and she's clearly shaken and she runs about 10 feet and falls. And then she picks herself up again and gets a couple feet and falls. And somebody comes out and puts their arm around her and she pushes them off. She's very nicely, she waves them off and she picks herself up and falls. And then eventually as she gets close to the finish line, she's collapsed, but she's crawling and somebody comes and helps lift her up, and she comes across the finish line. And the greatest lesson I've ever learned watching that, and that I've applied in my life, is you're going to fall. Everybody falls.
Yeah.
But as long as you're falling forward, you can still reach the finish line.
Love it.
It's when you fall and then go find somewhere to sit down and just consider yourself, oh, I'm not going to ever be able to do it. But if you don't stop moving, forward momentum is the key.
Well, I think that is the best note to complete our conversation on, falling forward. But I do want people listening to know how they can find you or be in touch. And so can you share a little bit of that information with us? We'll also have it all in the show notes.
Yeah, I think the best way is to come out to LinkedIn and look for Paul Kirch, or you can go to Selliance.com.
Okay.
And, I'm also very comfortable giving my work email address, because anybody that has a need and wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to field those conversations, because I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to be at that place where you feel like you don't have a lot of direction. I did a video the other day where I was talking about the fact that being an entrepreneur can be a lonely job, and sometimes you feel isolated. And there's some truth to that. And I had somebody that saw that video that's a very successful entrepreneur, actually a business owner in New York, reached out to me and says, hey, I loved what you said. It resonated because sometimes I don't know who to talk to when I'm struggling. I said, you know what? You got that connection now.
Yeah.
So Paul at Selliance.com. Feel free to connect with me directly. I'm happy to have those conversations.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate it. And I wish everyone would keep falling forward then.
Absolutely. Let's all fall forward.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Paul Kirch. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his professional transitions. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 039. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. Are you thinking about what's next for you? Ready to consider your options or begin a process of exploration to get the clarity, energy, and plans you need to move forward? I am piloting a small group for 4 to 6 professional women who are curious, willing, and ready to engage in a 3-month program that offers the information, inspiration, and support you need to get where you are going next. Cohorts are beginning in mid-September 2019. By the completion of the group, you will be refreshed and ready to take on new endeavors. Are you interested? Do you have questions? Please contact me through my website or via email, and we will schedule a conversation to explore the possibilities. If you enjoyed this episode with Paul, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows? Maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.